Welcome back to NewsX. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching Focal Length, where we get you a briefing on topics from across the world. The United States of America is preparing to welcome its 47th president, Donald Trump. His inauguration brings several questions. Will his tariff strategy benefit the US? How will his stance on immigration impact the US economy? Will he act on threats against Canada and the Panama Canal? Can Trump broker a deal in the Russia-Ukraine conflict or negotiate a Hamas-Israel hostage deal? Let's find out. Joining us is Casquejo. He is a program host and correspondent for Voice of America's English to Asia service, focusing on the Indo-Pacific region. Casquejo has also reported for the nationally syndicated First Business News program in Chicago. He is also a member of the Asian American Journalists Association. Thank you, Casquejo, for joining us. My first question to you is, what do you make of Trump's tariff policy and will it benefit the USA?
On the campaign trail, Trump said the most beautiful word in the dictionary is tariff. And of course, he imposed tariffs on many goods from China, and the Biden administration continued them. But the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation says tariffs imposed during the last 7 years under both the Biden and Trump administrations have cut GDP in the U.S. by 0.2% and eliminated about 140,000 full-time jobs in the U.S. In 2019, China imposed retaliatory tariffs on U.S. soybean exports, leading China to turn to other suppliers. This year, China's share of U.S. soybean exports is 18%, down from 40% in 2016, while Chinese customs data shows Brazil's share has grown to 76%. Trump spoke to the Economic Club of Chicago while campaigning for president in October, outlining why he believes tariffs help the U.S. economy. Number one, it's for protection of the companies we have here and the new companies that will move in. Because we will have thousands of companies coming into this country, we're going to grow it like it's never grown before, he said.
Trump has vowed to act tough on illegal migration. How will this impact the state of the U.S. economy?
Well, congressional Republicans seem to be backing him on this, and they're emphasizing the rule of law. Senator John Cornyn is a Republican from Texas. He says, "We will follow through on the order of removal by immigration courts. And again, we will not accept lawlessness and criminality in the United States as the new normal." But Democrats are saying it could hurt the economy. Senator Alex Padilla is a Democrat from California. He said the fact is there are millions of undocumented immigrants living in the United States today who are working in industries critical to our entire economy. Mass deportation of undocumented immigrants is virtually certain to have a negative impact on economic sectors where they are present as laborers in significant concentrations, especially agriculture and construction, said Marcus Nolan, who's the executive vice president and director of studies at the Peterson Institute for International Economics.
From Trump's Canadian tariff threat to taking over the Panama Canal, do you think Trump will act on these foreign policy claims?
Speaking to a group of supporters, Trump said the fees being charged by Panama are ridiculous, highly unfair. He also said it was given to Panama and the people of Panama, but it has provisions. You get to treat us fairly, and they haven't treated us fairly. If the principles, both moral and legal, of this magnanimous gesture of giving are not followed, then we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to us in full, quickly, and without question. Now, Trump's comments are an exceedingly rare example of a U.S. leader saying he could push a sovereign country to hand over territory. It also underlines an expected shift in U.S. diplomacy under Trump, who has not historically shied away from threatening allies and using economic and bellicose rhetoric when it comes to dealing with his counterparts who are leaders in other countries. Every square meter of the Panama Canal and the surrounding area belongs to Panama and will continue belonging to Panama, said Panamanian President Jose Raul Molino in a statement. So it's not clear on whether Trump will follow through with this threat, but the key point here is he is making that threat, and whether he will follow through, we'll just have to see.
What do you make of Trump's foreign policy on the Russia-Ukraine war? Can he negotiate a peace deal, and how?
Yes, President-elect Trump says he'll try for a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine at the start of his next presidential term. And he said both sides may have to compromise. But he also slammed the Biden administration's recent decision to allow Ukraine to strike Russia with long-range weapons provided by the U.S. And he says that when he takes office, he might reverse that move. Analyst William Pomerantz of the Wilson Center said a future Trump decision to roll back support would have significant military consequences for Ukraine and could pit Trump against U.S. allies in NATO. Pomerantz said, I see a potential clash between NATO allies and President Trump as to what is the future of the war. And quite frankly, when Trump talks about negotiations, he said, it really means that Ukraine has to negotiate and surrender, as it were, but he really doesn't put any conditions on Russia.
Trump has spoken about negotiating a hostage deal between Hamas and Israel. Is this a realistic possibility?
Trump said if the hostages are not home, that the ones that are held by Hamas are not home by January 2025, which is the date of his inauguration, then all hell is going to break loose, quote. Trump may deploy resources to place military pressure on Hamas. This according to Ahmad Faoud al-Khatib, who is a senior fellow at the conservative think tank Atlantic Council. Now, Hamas's internal wing may be more receptive to Washington's pressure, particularly since its patron, Iran, has weakened through the loss of Hezbollah in Lebanon and the ouster of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Like Hamas, Hezbollah is an Iranian proxy, while the Assad regime was Tehran's stalwart ally. Analysts say that before even taking office, Trump is already shaping the calculations of leaders in the Middle East. His pick for National Security Advisor, Congressman Mike Waltz, gave the president-elect credit for last month's ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon, which was brokered by the U.S. and France.
Do you think Trump's incoming administration will crack down on China through trade and strong military action in the Indo-Pacific?
Some analysts believe Trump's penchant for deal-making and his admiration for Chinese leader Xi Jinping may lead him to pursue a more transactional approach with regard to China, increasing the economic and military pressure on them while he gets concessions from them on issues like producing fentanyl precursor chemicals. So he may use tariffs as a threat, but he might not follow through with them, which is what Howard Lutnick, who is his pick for Commerce Secretary, believes is how Trump is going to use tariffs as a negotiating tool with China.
The US has granted more military and aid to Taiwan, which has elicited strong reactions from China. Does the US have the capabilities to fight China in the East China Sea?
Well, China had a strong reaction after U.S. President Joe Biden authorized $571 million in Defense Department material and military education and training for self-ruled Taiwan, which Beijing claims as its own territory and says it must come under its control. Separately, the Defense Department on Friday said that $295 million in military sales had been approved. Now, U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has said he would not commit to defending Taiwan if China were to invade it. Trump also said that China should pay the U.S. for defending it against China, likening the relationship to insurance. Taiwan spends about 2.5% of its GDP on defense. Now, this is similar to what Trump has said about NATO allies, but some analysts believe the U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity with regard to Taiwan should be upgraded to a policy of strategic clarity involving an ironclad commitment to help Taiwan should China invade. And that's the position that is actually shared by Michael Waltz, who is Trump's pick for National Security Advisor. He said that the U.S. must be clear, will defend Taiwan as a deterrent measure. He also has called for an increased military presence in the Indo-Pacific.
Trump has come down heavily on BRICS nations. In spite of this, do you think BRICS has the potential to challenge the dollar in the New World Order?
Trump has threatened a 100% tariff on products should BRICS develop its own currency to challenge the U.S. dollar. The BRICS bloc, of course, began with China, Russia, India, Brazil, and South Africa. And this year it has expanded to include Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Ethiopia, and Egypt. Talk of a BRICS currency gained momentum following the U.S.-led sanctions on Russia in 2022 after its invasion of Ukraine. But in recent years, economic and political tensions have grown between the West and China. But analysts in India say the creation of a currency from BRICS is unlikely to gain currency because the countries have major differences, such as India and China. And at the same time, several BRICS members have accelerated efforts to explore ways to reduce dependence on the US dollar, which has been the dominant currency in world markets since World War II.
Thank you, Chris Casquejo, for joining us on Focal Length. With that, it's a wrap on this episode. For more international news updates, stay tuned on NewsX.